because print is so much about communication.
Hello, print friends, and welcome. I'm your host, Miranda Metcalf. This is a bilingual podcast, so if you subscribe to us, you'll be getting episodes in English with me, as well as in Spanish with Ronaldo Gil Zambrano. Together, we speak to people from around the globe about their practice and passions in the fields of print media and multiples. Hello, Print Friend is brought to you by Speedball Art Products, currently offering possibly the best thing to happen to relieve printmaking, their Woodzilla presses. Beautifully made in the Netherlands, these uniquely engineered presses perfectly combine superior craftsmanship and performance at a price that makes them accessible whether you're a seasoned printmaking pro or new to the craft. Available across 5 sizes, each Woodzilla press is precisely manufactured from heavy-duty steel and designed to apply uniform pressure without undue work or stress for the artist, while still guaranteeing a beautifully printed result at every reveal. Check out these beauties through the link in the show notes. My guest this week is Haley Takahashi. We talk about her journey as an art history student turned artist, the particulars and complexities of drawing on ukiyo-e imagery as a Japanese-American artist, her long-standing self-portrait practice, and how it shows up in her current work. So, without further ado, sit back, relax, and prepare to get self-reflective with Haley Takahashi. Hi, Haley. How's it going?
Oh, so good. How are you?
I'm really good. It is so nice to meet you. And I was just introduced to your work through the 5x5 jurying. And I fell in love with it instantly. I was like, I like what this person is doing. And so when the list was sent out for the different podcasters to interview people, I was like, I want Haley Takahashi.
Oh, that is so nice. Like I told you over our little email conversation, I have been listening to this for so long, and it's just so amazing to be on here with you.
Well, I'm so happy you're here. And like I said, I think we're going to have a great chat. And I just really look forward to learning more about your work.
Thank you. I'm so excited.
So before we dive in, if you've listened to an episode or two, I think you know what's coming,
Yeah.
which is the questions: who you are, where you are, what you do.
Cool. Well, I'm Haley Takahashi. I'm currently in my final semester of grad school, getting my MFA at UTK. So I'm based out in Knoxville, but I'm from Fort Collins, Colorado. And I'm a printmaker. So I've been feeling a little more interdisciplinary as of late, where I branch in whatever direction my creative spirit takes me. So, but always having that foundation in print.
Absolutely. Well, and I think when people dive into things a bit and when things practices get more in depth, particularly through something like grad school,
Mhm.
you can get to the point where you're like, everything is print.
Yeah,
Really. It's all
seriously.
print.
Yeah, it's a joke amongst my cohort that we're like, is this a print? Is this a print? Because like everything can be a print.
Mhm. Absolutely. And so before we get into the now, let's
Mhm.
dive into the past a little bit.
Cool.
And can you let me know where you grew up and what role art had in that part of your life?
Oh, absolutely. So, like I said, I grew up in Fort Collins, Colorado. My dad was actually an art teacher. He's been retired for a while now, but art has always just intrinsically been part of my life. And as I've heard many artists say, like it's something they've always known and always done. And I can
Mm.
relate to that a lot. I remember like sitting on my dad's lap really young and being like, draw a hot air balloon, now draw a bird, now draw whatever. And he'd just do it for me, which was really, really sweet and cool. So I think I always knew I wanted to be an artist, and I
Mm.
fell very naturally into it because of how I was raised.
Absolutely. And so what art did your father do?
He, funny enough, did print and
Uh-huh.
then paper making, and he taught ceramics and photo at the high school I went to. So he had many a medium too. and now he actually is a fly fisherman and
Oh, lovely.
ties little flies, and that's what he does, which is really cool. And my mom's very creative too. She sews and quilts and is amazing at that. So I had a very creative upbringing.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And then so when you were finishing up high school, did you know, all right, I'm going to find some art track, or did you have a practical stint for a while?
Well, yeah, I went through a weird moment of self-doubt where you have like a partner who isn't supportive and
Mm.
have art teachers who I felt entitled to their praise, which I absolutely wasn't. And like, so it was this very strange time where was fully convinced that I could not make a career out of art and that
Mm.
there are people who said like it's too hard, you don't have what it takes, like you're not gonna it's hard and you're not gonna be able to do it. And I was like, you're right. I'm gonna do something else. So I went into undergrad as an art history major. I still love art history. It's so great. I've like played around with the idea of getting another degree in art history.
Mm, mhm.
Yeah, so I was actually but I was so lost and so sad because I so deeply believed that I wasn't going to be able to make it as an artist. And I was an art minor, and so I
Mhm.
only had like a very small number of classes where I could actually take studio art classes. And I was signed up for ceramics and photography. And I went to the first day of photography and was like, absolutely not. This is not for me. I I only get so many art classes. I'm not going to take this photo class. And so I went to my advisor and I was like, please just get me in something else. And she's like, the only classes that are open are relief and monotype. And I was like, okay, I don't know what a monotype is, but I'll take that class. And that absolutely changed my life. Like, as cheesy as it sounds, it was incredible. I met Melanie Yazzie, who's absolutely as delightful and amazing as her reputation.
Oh, yeah, she's on the wish list for the podcast for
Oh my
sure.
gosh, she's so great. I hope you get to talk to her. She was just like exactly what I needed in that
Mm.
time of my life where it was like feeling so so sad and down and going into this print class. I remember the first day we were doing monotypes, I rolled out ink onto a table that didn't have glass on it and like I
Oh.
remember making mistakes and like and she was just like so kind and gentle. And she was after like halfway through that class, she like sat me down and she's like, "So you're changing your major?" And I was
Oh.
like, "No, like I don't think I can." And she's like, "Haley, you're an artist. I don't know what you're doing, but you should be an artist. You should get a BFA. Like I believe in you." And I just ran with that since then.
Love that. That makes me wanna cry. It's so sweet, and it's so just like it's like to really be seen by someone like that is always so powerful, I think.
It's absolutely
Yeah.
what I needed at the time, and I'm, oh, so grateful. I still get teary-eyed thinking about it. Yeah, like, I don't know where I would be without that strange turn of events where I refused to take photo.
Think that experience that you had too, and I think it at a pretty young age has gotta be so powerful and forming to know that, like, when you're not in your truth, even if your truth is impractical or whatever it is, like, when you're not in it, it creates a real sickness of spirit.
Yeah,
It sounds like
absolutely.
it's what you were experiencing.
Oh, absolutely.
Mhm.
Yeah.
'Cause you're
Um,
an artist, and you need to be doing art.
I was an artist, I'm an artist. Yeah.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
wonderful.
it was really great, and my parents were incredibly supportive through the entire thing and have been up to forever, so it's great.
Yeah, up to today. Yeah, hopefully, yeah, going forward. Oh, that's really beautiful, and so you were doing monotype and relief, and then you
Mhm.
switched your major.
Yeah.
And at this point, you have this art historical background because you were
Mhm.
taking classes in that.
Yeah.
And at least in your current practice, I definitely see references to
Yes.
historical pieces. Was that weaving in already happening at the undergraduate level because you had this little foray into art history, do you think?
Oh, absolutely. I have always been very taken with Japanese ukiyo-e prints, and I think I'm half Japanese, and that's a very big part of my artistic practice, and when I was in art history, that was what I was most excited about, and then when I got into this print class, I was like, "Okay, now I'm doing the print that doing the process." Even though it's not I wasn't doing, like, in layer mokuhanga prints, I was making little monotypes, but having that inspiration has just been something that I've carried with me ever since, and I've
Mm,
been trying to expand past that, like, one singular inspiration, but there's just such a wealth of
yeah.
knowledge.
It's a whole world. I started out at Davidson Galleries in Seattle and in my professional career, and we had a lot of Japanese historical prints in the
Mhm.
collection, and we had these cylinder boxes, and that was you could see how much they were changing between like Edo period and Shinhanga and all these different things, and then you get into this absolutely brilliant abstraction and minimalism in the mid-century, and it is so deep that I feel like if you were drawing from it artistically, I mean, that is almost a well that would never run dry because
Oh,
there's
yeah,
just so much there. Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, and it's been I think in undergrad, it was a lot of really direct inspiration, and as I've grown, it's become more about me trying to create this identity or define this identity for myself as being Japanese American and being biracial and what it means for me, someone who was born and raised in America, to be inspired by these pieces.
Mhm.
So, yeah, that's something I grapple with a lot.
Yeah. And so, were you originally introduced to ukiyo-e and mokuhanga through art history, or was that at all a part of your growing up and having artistic people in the family?
I think I feel like Japanese print is already in the American zeitgeist, like the
Mhm.
Great Wave. You can't go anywhere without seeing that.
Yeah.
I went to the Met with my family the first time I visited New York and saw the prints like up close, and that really changed my point of view on it. And I knew that if I was going to go into art history, I really that's what I wanted to study because I did have this like personal cultural connection, and that hasn't really changed even though I've switched modes of working.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you were talking about that had you had this direct response and now it's a bit evolved as you as an artist you're evolving.
Yeah.
And so the way I've seen it appear I think really interestingly in your work is actually as objects within the composition. So
Mhm.
you can tell that sometimes the figures are like how the figures are rendered are a reference to specifically ukiyo-e
Mhm.
tradition, but then the actual pieces will show up as well, which I think is really interesting. It has this inception type quality of the piece within the piece that also is reflecting of the piece. Yeah.
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 Yeah, I've really been playing around with like the reasons why I chose to be inspired specifically by Edo period prints and Utamaro and thinking about like the context and meaning behind those works when they were made and then what it means then for me to be working in a similar way now.
Mm, mhm.
And that's changed a lot as I've gone through grad school, and yeah.
Yeah. And it's interesting because a couple times you've spoken to what what it means as someone who's a Japanese American taking this imagery and transforming it and turning it into her own voice. And I'm sure this is an ongoing exploration, but do you have any insights for what that does mean?
Yeah. I I'm not gonna say that I know the, like, most wise and all-seeing answers to this, but and it is a very much so, like, an individual struggle, but
Mhm.
I know something that I've been coming to terms with and dealing with is the idea of cultural appropriation, and I still struggle with getting maybe uncharacteristically upset over how the appropriation of Japanese imagery.
Mhm. Mhm.
Like, I used to be really sour about anime. I There were just many moments where I felt so upset that there were people who had not gone through the struggles that are present in the American society that we live in and didn't experience marginalization and then were just picking and choosing aesthetic things and reducing an entire population down to those small symbols or, clothes or pieces of culture. And I used to get like really, really mad about it.
Mm.
And then the more I thought about it, the more I was like, am I even entitled to be using this inspiration in my work? Like, I'm Japanese American, I'm not Japanese from Japan. And like, what does that say? And I feel like for a time it felt like reclamation for me,
Mhm.
that I was taking back some sense of this identity and reworking it into my context. And I think now I'm trying to understand like appreciation and appropriation and maybe making more of a, I don't want to say political statement. It's not really a political statement, but to say like what does it mean for me as a Japanese American, as someone who's biracial, to have to reach for these cultural symbols because it's something that was like taken away or that was looked down upon historically.
Mm.
Yeah, that's a very long-winded answer.
No, I think it's a beautiful answer and really, I think, vulnerable to for you to answer it as honestly as you did when it is such muddy waters. It sounds
Yes.
like it's your it's and so personal to you as
Yeah.
well. So
Yeah.
that's twofold, like, you're working with something that is really complex, but also really personally charged. So I
Yes.
really appreciate your openness to the question.
Of course.
Yeah, because it is really complicated, which of course is like always like the really reductive phrase that doesn't really mean anything, but I don't know a better one as of yet.
Mhm.
And as you talk about the appropriation of Japanese imagery,
Mhm.
I mean it's so pervasive, and I think
Mhm.
particularly it had a, I mean it's has a long history in the United States, but it had this weird climax in the early noughts
Mhm.
where the singers on MTV were wearing kimono and everyone was getting kanji tattoos, and
Yep.
it had this huge moment that still continues in some ways, of course, but
Mhm.
where it just was everywhere, and I'm guessing that that was probably around your more formative years,
Absolutely.
and so trying to figure out adult personhood at the same time you're seeing all of this reflected back to you in popular imagery and media. I mean, I can't imagine that that could not leave an impression on
Oh,
you.
absolutely. Absolutely. And, like, I cannot tell you how many times I'll be like, "Yeah, I'm half Japanese, like, my last name is Takahashi," and they'll be like, "Do you watch anime? Like,
Oh.
are you do you speak Japanese?" And it's like, just these very, I don't know, intense questions, like, right out of the gate, various big assumptions, and yeah, it did. It's continued to leave an impact on me, so,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that it's just such a misinformed way of trying to
Yeah,
connect
and
and, inherently otherizing in
yeah,
this way that I feel like is just, at a certain point, intention doesn't matter, you
yeah,
know? It's like, what's the real effect here
yeah,
of this way that you are interacting with Japanese culture and Japanese people?
exactly, yeah, and, like, I get the very real desire to appreciate these things. I feel like I also have that tendency,
Mm,
and maybe it's for a little bit different reasons, but it is just a big, whirling, complex beast that
yeah.
you have to deal with, but
Yeah. Do you ever get the opportunity to hash these things out with your Japanese family members or Japanese community or your Japanese parent?
mhm,
And is that someone or people who can understand where you're coming from, someone you can connect with on these issues and get other perspectives?
yeah. I haven't really found that,
Mm,
like, community per se.
mhm,
I find that a lot of other biracial artists who I meet, we have a synergy or, like, connection where we understand the reasons behind the choices we make and the art that we make, and that's really beautiful and lovely. And I specifically really wanted to go to UTK to work with Koichi Yamamoto.
mhm, mhm.
It was very important to me when choosing grad schools to go to a school with a Asian or Asian American faculty member because I knew I would want to hash out these issues, and
Yeah,
Koichi is fantastic, one of the most generous people I've ever met, so,
that's wonderful.
yeah, it's been
Yeah. I'd love to get a chance to give you some space to reflect on the women in your work and the female bodies because there is a long and deep and horrendous tradition of fetishizing and commodifying Japanese women's bodies
yes.
through art, through culture, and a lot of that has to do that objectification can come through in the way the bodies are shown and take up in public spaces through works of art or through advertisements or whatever it is.
Absolutely.
And so you were putting these bodies in your work,
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
standing on the shoulders of this huge cultural burden.
Yeah.
Can you speak to that? I know it's a huge question, but
Yeah, that is a big question. I've always seen the figures in my work as extensions of myself.
Mhm,
I had a really cute elementary school art teacher who had us draw self-portraits every year,
mhm,
and I ran with that and continued to do it and still continue to do that, and it feels very, like, self-reflective, and so all of these figures, I don't trying to even think about a piece where I didn't intentionally make the main figure an extension of myself, and that
mm.
sounds so narcissistic. I'm so trying to be like that, but I'm trying to be truthful about these, like, themes and things that I'm trying to express through my work, and I think I can't speak for anyone else or anyone else's experience or tell anyone else what to feel or how they've experienced things, so I've filtered everything through me.
Mm, mhm.
And a lot of the pieces that do have those traditional rendered, like, the, you know, Japanese print style figures, they were really heavily based on Utamaro and specifically 12 Hours in Yoshiwara, which is a very problematic series of prints now if you think about the context that it was glorifying of the red light district of Edo,
Mhm.
and it was depicting these women as, like, having happy, beautiful lives when in reality
Yeah.
it wasn't really what it was. And I tried to think about that as like what would somebody looking at my life see? And so I
Hmm.
wanted to be very candid about like longing and isolation and loneliness, and also the figure. I never make the figure like confronting the viewer,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that's both a way to maybe protect the figure a little bit, but also to maybe make the viewer contend with their position as a viewer. Does that make sense?
Hmm.
The
Yeah.
viewer in the space. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And that it reminds me too of traditional ukiyo-e depictions of women, is that they're
Mhm.
often it's that showing off the back of the neck. I
Exactly.
mean, yeah, which is the course, like
Mhm.
the erogenous zone. Don't know
Yeah.
how to say that respectfully, but
Yeah.
it's the sexy bits.
Yeah.
Um and seeing that too in your contemporary figures, it just has such a sense of time and place that
Mhm.
then is butted up against Dr. Pepper cans, and I
Exactly.
think it gives such an interesting feeling,
Mhm.
yeah, of time and place and history sort of all coming together.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that not everyone knows the history of Japanese prints and can relate back to like these subtle details, but I'd hope that they're communicating a sense of like nuanced reexamining of these old sources
Mhm.
the way that I have in making the work.
Mm. Yeah, and I think what's sort of interesting about the visual lexicon
Yeah.
is that I think people know that silhouette, even
Mhm.
if they don't know that they know it, of the dark hair tied up and
Mhm.
a neck from behind. I think people, even if they've just seen it on the walls in Pan Asian cuisine restaurants in a strip mall,
Seriously.
I think that it is such an iconic symbol, at least for me, that I think it will come through even if they're not a print nerd
Yeah,
like myself.
I hope so.
So then you also do, and particularly last year in 2020 and in 2021, you've seen this use of actual photography that look like historical photographs or family photographs. Who are these figures and how does it fit in with everything?
Yeah, I started doing some cyanotypes, so
Mm.
that's one photo method. I'm Screen print is probably my favorite of the print mediums and just everything you can do with it. So that's been another way that I've started using photos. But I had access to these family photos, and I really wanted to cache through family history, maybe a little bit of generational trauma, also a sense of like reclamation. Some of them are from my dad's side of the family. There's pictures of my grandparents and my dad and his sisters as children. I've done some work with like my dad's Air Force portrait.
Mhm.
One of them is a picture of my great grandma on my mom's side, who her name was Nona, even though she is not Italian and she was a grandma, because Nona means grandma in Italian, but yeah. So, but she was a firecracker and a really awesome lady, and thinking about that maternal line as well,
Mhm.
because that has been something that I have maybe neglected a little bit in my work. I'm so focused on trying to hash out and work through my Japanese-ness that I sometimes forget about my whiteness as
Mhm.
well. Um, and I think as I continue on as an artist, that will be something that I will figure out.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, and I think that that's such an interesting part of that exploration and part of the inherent white supremacist culture of the United States, is that in mixed race people, the whiteness culturally tends to be erased
Yeah,
because it's just like it's trying to continue to hold the seat of power by
yeah,
not letting people in.
yeah,
That's the goal. That's how it works.
absolutely. Yeah.
Um, and I think for people who through the explicit and implicit bias that non-white people experience,
Mm.
I could see how the non-white identity would feel like it was coming more forward because of
Mhm.
how you're received in the world. And then
Absolutely.
also to have to then realize, wait, I'm so much complex. I'm a complex thing and look through that. It's gotta be a whole 'nother kettle of fish.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
I contain multitudes.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's it's very hard, and I think it was not something that I started to really contend with until I started making prints and working
Mm,
with Ozzy, and it was one of those things that I tried to when I was younger, I can remember trying to not be as Japanese, which is so
mm,
heartbreaking now to think about. And another reason that I am really attached to these family photos is my grandparents were interned during World War
mm,
II, and I have a lot of strong feelings, and I don't know if anger is the right word, but sadness
mhm.
surrounding what was taken from them. And the fact that, like, my dad never learned Japanese, and he probably didn't learn Japanese because his parents were so afraid of what would happen if someone saw him speaking Japanese. Maybe he doesn't feel that way. I haven't talked to him about it, and I probably should. But
Yeah.
yeah, I feel as if something has been taken, and it's very hard to get back.
Mhm.
And so it's clinging to the, like, family ephemera.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense, and I know that some of the imagery around the Japanese internment camps shows up in your work,
Yeah.
and I feel like there's something about how that history of Japanese internment is so hidden
Yeah.
that it's a devastating part of our history
Yeah.
that I think even when I was in school in the 1990s wasn't really talked about
Mhm.
in the Pacific Northwest, where there were massive internment camps. Like, that
Right.
history there is so recent and so present. I
Yeah.
mean, the biggest fairgrounds in the state is the site of a Japanese internment camp,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's still not put forward in that traditional telling of World War II, which
Yeah.
is like, Hitler was bad and Europe was losing, and then we came in, the
Yeah.
end, and we
Yeah.
saved the world, and it's just like, yeah, so
Yeah, like, so much happened, and yeah, I remember in 5th grade, we were learning about the Holocaust, and we were reading A Fault in Our Stars, and my sweet, sweet little baby Haley, I
Oh,
went up to my teacher and I was like, "Am I Jewish?" And
oh,
she was like she laughed and she was like, "Haley, no, you're not Jewish." And she, of course, like, both my parents were educators, she knew my family. And I was like, "But my family got taken away.
yeah,
My family went to camp." Sorry, I'm, like, tearing up talking about it.
okay, yeah.
But she was incredible, and we had a full week where we just talked about Japanese internment. Um, sorry.
No, no need to
Oh,
apologize at all.
yeah, but that was a really beautiful thing for her to do. It wasn't part of the curriculum, and she saw fit to tell us about it. Yeah. So that was really cool. And yeah, I still obviously carry a lot of sadness.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm just giving you some space. I don't wanna jump and cut you off at all in it,
Oh,
so that's why
no.
I'm just being quiet over here. I
That
wanna make
is
sure that you
totally
say
fine.
everything that you need to and want to, because
Oh,
yeah, I can, like, I can feel it, like, through the screen. The hiddenness of the
yeah.
history is just horrendous
Yeah,
and confusing and gaslighting and all of those things for,
absolutely.
like, the Japanese American experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and so given that history that you feel so strongly and it's still so present for you,
Yeah.
how do you go about even beginning to fold something like that into an artistic practice? Because it's
Oh,
so big, and I can feel, like, how much it's a part of you.
mhm.
I would and how do you wed that to your making?
Yeah, it's sometimes it's hard for me to think about these, like, multiple facets of myself at once, so I feel like I've had bodies of work that are really talking about family history and really focused on making sure the stories are told, because if we the people who were in internment camps who are still alive are very old, and again, this is a history that hasn't been outwardly shared for a very long time. I think it's starting to change. Um, Hopefully, fingers crossed. And I feel like if I don't talk about it, then who's going to?
Mhm.
I'm also like incredibly inspired by Roger Shimomura. I don't know
Yeah.
if you've ever seen his work. Like, I remember he had a piece up at the KMA, and I just stood in the gallery and cried because of
Oh.
me. But and I think seeing someone talk so candidly about that experience was really eye opening to me.
Mhm.
And like it's something that my family won't talk about. And it's something that like I feel I would be disrespectful to ask of my family members who are still living that experience that,
Right.
even though it is, I feel like, so vital to understanding how I exist in this society. So it's really grasping at straws and trying to work through things through the work. It's very cathartic and therapeutic at times. But yeah, I try and keep the memory alive, per se.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
And one of the pieces I'm particularly thinking of that is just really, like, hit you over the head with a brick powerful that you've done is is the kimono
Yeah.
that hangs with the text. Is I
Mhm.
don't know if it, I'm sure you can speak to if it's from a poster or
Mhm.
a newspaper or something, but it looks like I think maybe like a
Yeah,
poster.
that's the executive order.
Yeah, on the fabric, and it's so beautiful and so chilling at the same time. And I think really powerful in the space that it takes up.
Yeah,
And so this is also sort of a way to get into being curious about making the work that you do translate from the two-dimensional to the
yeah,
three-dimensional. I think
absolutely.
some of the reason why that piece is, like, has so much presence is because of its physical presence, because it's hanging, you can walk around it, it's large, so it's serving a really different purpose than a small print. So,
Yeah,
no, I'm hoping you can speak to that element of what you do.
absolutely. Yeah. I that foray into kimono making was me really just like following a hunch and a desire. And like I said, my mom's a seamstress.
Mm.
So I've known how to sew. She taught me how to sew when I was very young. I have the sewing machine I use now is passed down through 3 generations of
Oh.
my family through on my mom's side. And I knew that I wanted to print on fabric. I knew that I wanted to make kimonos because they speak so closely to a body.
Mm, mhm.
So I mean, I love figures, and I think the kimono is just an extension of the figure, but it's also talking about absence and the absence of the figure while also representing it. And that piece came from this frustration where I wanted people to be confronted with the history
Hmm.
and have to contend with it in the space. And so it's like 8 feet tall, 5 feet wide. It's, I believe, like 42 yards of fabric that I
Wow.
hand printed and hand dyed. And it was a lot of labor and a lot of work. And I felt very driven and very passionate to make it. And it serves as one of my most successful pieces that I've ever made. And then I think because of the success of that piece, I've been constantly curious about how I can translate print or use print in the three-dimensional space. And actually, for my master's show, for my thesis, I'm building a room of shoji screens.
Oh, wow. Uh-huh.
So it'll be like a room within a room that the audience can't enter. They can't enter the interior room, and have a light source in the center of that and have print stretched on the outside. Because print is so much about communication,
Right. Hmm.
I think. And that could be my Gemini rising talking, but um, I love print for its like the context of communication, of getting knowledge out there or sharing information. And it's I've been thinking about bringing when I bring it into a three-dimensional space, how is this communicating differently or better, or how can I best communicate what I'm trying to communicate with the medium? So that's been the inspiration behind that.
Yeah, absolutely. And to that end, you recently had an exhibition at Gallery 1010
Yeah,
that's collaborative that had
yeah,
a lot of 3D works in it as Silk Memorial. Can you speak to that?
yeah. Yeah, so me and another member of the cohort, his name's Anthony Huang. He's incredible. He was doing these huge fabric installations. And I approached him and I was like, Anthony, fabric, I have a sewing machine. We need to make kimonos. And we we like set the date, we did it, applied for the show, made the kimonos, and then everything else in that show was works on fabric as well. And we were both thinking about this, like, cultural history, our relationship to it, having like an emotional response. And I ended up also, he printed all the fabric on the that was on the outside, and then I printed and dyed all the fabric on the inside. And so thinking about like what is outwardly shown and what is close to you
Mm, mhm.
within that. But it was just a very logical collaboration, and I really enjoyed working with him. And working with another Asian artist, I think, is awesome. And I love the idea of expanding community and working together. And so that was great.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah. And you can cut this out if you don't want it in there, but I mean, if you're particularly keen to work with other artists, would you say that if they wanted to reach out to you if they hear the podcast and are interested, you'd be open to it?
Absolutely.
Oh,
I'm
good.
working with literally anyone. I think we have so much that can be shared, and
Mm,
print
mhm.
is such an awesome medium because we can share it so freely, and like print exchanges and projects. And yeah, I think just be so psyched to talk with and work with anyone.
Oh, good. I
Yeah,
love that. I love that. A true
totally.
print friend.
Yes, print friend. Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
as you mentioned, you're getting to the point where you're working on your senior show, or your is it no, it's not a senior show if it's a graduate school. It's a
Like
master
thesis.
show, thesis show?
Yeah, yeah.
Right, you're working on your thesis show. So that means that you're coming to the end of the graduate school experience. What are you hoping to do after? Are you looking to teach, to travel, to do residencies? I mean, all of the above, none of the above?
I That is such a big question right now. I think I always wanted to teach, and especially being the child of two teachers,
Mhm.
I value the process of education, and the people who give their lives to teaching, I think, are incredible people, and I would love to be in that realm. And in the same breath, I'm 25. I am
Mhm.
a teensy tiny little baby in the grand scheme of my entire art career, and I want to just experience whatever I can experience. I want to do residencies or travel or yeah, whatever, but I also really want to teach. It's hard. It's like there's too many choices right now.
Yeah, totally, and I can imagine too, like, particularly at the place where you are leading up to the thesis show, so much creativity and energy and processing power is going towards that, that it
Absolutely.
almost probably seems like the deciding what comes after that just needs to happen when you get there. Because right now, you're making the biggest, most ambitious art collaboration of your life right now.
Yeah, but it's also like it's just such a little drop in the pond of what I will hopefully do in the rest of my artistic career, and like
Absolutely.
I gotta like applications are due soon, and like
Mhm.
all that. So it's an interesting place to be in for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I want to get a chance to talk to you a little bit more about the craft of your work and the actual media that you use,
Mhm.
and this idea of using these images that draw from traditional ukiyo-e, but you're not using woodcuts to do them.
Mm.
And that actual philosophy behind that choice.
Yeah, absolutely. I just adore screen printing.
Mm,
It makes sense to me ever since I started doing it. It just clicked and made sense. And I think when it got down to the concepts and techniques, I started on a path where I was like, I really need to learn mokuhanga, I really need to learn relief, and it just like didn't make sense to me the way
mm,
that screen print did. And so I was thinking like, how can I conceptually back this, and like what is my conceptual choice? And I think it really comes down to that pop communication, that like very contemporary feeling that screen printing can have, and the very direct, very flat colors. I think there's a lot of similarities between
mhm.
what you can do with wood blocks and what you can do with screen printing. And I love a blend roll, a split fountain. I As cheesy as it is, I bet that so many people who listen to this are probably like, "Of course, a blend roll." But just thinking back to the bokashi gradients in
Mhm.
mokuhanga and that like soft blend, you can do that with screen printing, and that's really interesting to me. And so I think it speaks to me not just trying to recreate ukiyo-e prints, but like actually filtering it through myself and transforming it and speaking in a contemporary fashion.
Yeah. Oh, that's really beautiful.
Thank you.
So, what are you looking forward to? Anything else on the horizon that you want people to know about, that you want support for, anything like that?
I mean, 5 by 5 Prince
Mhm.
MFA. Amazing. I still am absolutely flabbergasted that I was chosen for this. My thesis is coming up at the end of March, which is very soon. Yeah. If anyone wants to hire a super cool printmaker who knows lots of stuff, let me know.
You're like, "I know a girl." Yeah.
Yeah, but
That's
I'm
wonderful.
yeah, I think trying to experience the present moment and not look too far in the future. But yeah.
That's wonderful. Well, where can people find you, follow you, get in touch?
Yes. My Instagram is Haley Tokiko, HaleyTokiko. And my website is, I believe, just haleytakahashi.com. Usually, like, DMing through Instagram is the best way to reach me. I am a Zoomer in that way. But, yeah, I would absolutely love to talk to people and share stories. And yeah.
I love it. Well, Haley, it has been my absolute pleasure to talk with you. You are a delight, and I am so happy I got introduced to your work, and I can't wait to follow what you're going to do with your wonderful self. And thank you for being so open and vulnerable and honest about your experience. It was an honor to hear it.
It was absolutely incredible to talk to you. It was so surreal. So amazing. Thank you for giving me space to share these stories.
Oh, I can't wait to stay in touch.
I'm so excited. Oh, so exciting.
If you like today's episode, we have a Patreon where you can help us keep the lights on and get bonus content. Like Shop Talk Shorts, where our editor, Timothy Pauschak, digs deep on materials, processes, and techniques with past guests. Also, if monetary support isn't in the cards right now, you can leave a review for us on your podcast listening app of choice, or buy something from one of our sponsors and tell them Hello Print Friend sent you. But as always, the very, very best thing you can do to support this podcast is by listening and sharing with your fellow print friends around the world. And that's our show for this week. Join me again next week when my guest will be Johanna Mueller, artist in the upcoming 5x5 exhibition taking place at Print Santa Fe. For more information on Print Santa Fe, you can go to www.printsantafe.org. We talk about drawing inspiration from the natural world, building a physically sustainable practice as a wood engraver, a bear burglar, and creating artistic community outside of the big city. You won't want to miss it. This episode, like all episodes, was written and produced by me, Miranda Metcalf, with editing by Timothy Pauschak and music by Joshua Weber. I'll see you next week.